Hello and welcome to Delmi Training Institute's DTIL 101 Introduction to Network Cabling, and today we are on lab number 3. So lab number 3 focuses on creating your own patch cable or jumper cable using a pass-through RJ45 connector. Well, the objective of this lab is to build your own category cable using either 5E6, 6A, whichever you want to use. And it's an Unshielded Twisted Pair cable, UTP. So you're going to create your own patch cable, and once that is done, you're going to be testing for continuity. So first of all, before I go through this, the material that we're going to need for this lab is a piece of category cable, and this could be your category 5E or 6 cable, 6A, etc. That's what you're going to need. You're going to need RJ45 Jacks, and those are going to be 2 pieces. And since we're creating using pass-through jacks, we actually need to make sure we have 2 types of pass-throughs. And these pass-throughs, you can also buy them like this. This is the standard color, or you could also opt to buy ones that come with the boot sleeve on it, and that takes off most of the stress from the cable when you're bending it. So you could also decide to buy this, or you could buy that. They come in different colors, and whichever one that interests you, you might also be able to purchase. So these ones, how would you know that they're pass-throughs? By taking it and just looking between, you can see there's an opening on the edge, on the tip here, that allows the cables to come through when you terminating. So this is the easiest way to identify a pass-through jack from a non-pass-through. So we're going to need that. We're going to need our crimp tool, and this is a typical example of the crimp tool that we're going to be needing. You could either use this or you could use this. They are the same. However, I have to let you know one thing. Because this is a pass-through jack that we're using, we expect that once we crimp, we should have a blade to cut off all the excess cables. So when you're picking up a crimp tool to use alongside your RJ45 pass-throughs, make sure it has a blade in it. And so this particular one has a blade embedded in here. As you can see, that blade here will cut off all the excess cables once I crimp it. So it does 2 things in one. It would crimp all these gold pins. It would push all of them in to make good contact, at the same time cut off all the excess cables. So that is what this is made up of. If you decide to go with this style, which I know a lot of people do, one, because of they can hear it actually crimp, it's got the gears in it, just make sure that it also got the blade in there, so once you crimp it, it can do that. This particular tool can do both the 8 pin, so 8 positions, and this will do the 6 positions for telephone as well. So depending on which one you want to have as part of your toolkit, just make sure that you buy one that has the blade if you want to use it for pass-throughs. So these are going to be the tools we're going to use, the crimp tools. Now we need a twisted pair stripping tool. So this would be a type of stripping tool that we can use. This is made by Fluke. Or if you're comfortable using your pair of lineman scissors, you can also go ahead and use that. So these are our stripping tools that we're going to be using. Finally, we need a cable tester. And that tester is going to tell us whether we did good putting the connectors on both ends. And with this, I'm going to use this very basic tester. This tester allows me to plug both ends of the cables in here and test. So that's just what I'm going to do. They come apart and you can just slide them on. So this is a very basic wire map tester. In future labs, we'll be talking about all the different types of testers that we do have. So well, those are the materials we're going to need for this lab. First of all, let's go through the procedure in executing this lab. So step number 1, we are going to determine the length of the patch cable that we actually need to create. So that's the first thing you have to do. If you need a 2 feet, make sure you have 2 feet of the cable you need. And step number 2, you want to be able to strip about 1 to 2 inch of the jacket off. So you can either use your stripping tool. I'm just going to take these out of the way. So you can actually take your stripping tool, and this is how you use this tool. This allows you to adjust how much pressure to put on the blade to go through the jacket. If you happen to do different makes and brands and categories of cables, you would find out that you're constantly adjusting this dial to put pressure on it. So first of all, you just have to lift here, put your cable in there. So we're looking about 1 to 2 inches of the cable, and you're just going to put your hand in and just spin it clockwise and counterclockwise. And what is expected is it should create an incision on the cable. If that doesn't happen, which means that there's not enough force on that cable to cut. If you're bending it like this, I can see a small incision on it, but it wasn't deep enough. So I'm going to increase the tension on the blade, and that is going to end up pushing it in to allow me to cut. So I'm going to try it again. I've seen others try and use this section of it. However, this is made for very small cables. If I put that in here, for example, and I do it, it could also cut like this, but sometimes it could cut deep into the jacket, and it could also touch the individual strands. So depending on how your adjustment goes, you can either use that or this to do it. My preference is to use this, and if the cable has some amount of shielding on it, then I would want to use this so it doesn't go beyond. That shade here is going to block you going deep and go beyond that. So that's just how to use this tool. So I'm going to go about 2 inches here. I'm going to put that on. I'm going to spin it and take it off. So I can see a little bit of an incision on this side here, and all I have to do is bend it a little bit. You could see it just by bending it a little bit like that. You could see I did not go through the jacket entirely. So at that point, I am guaranteed that I did not create any damage on the individual cable strands as well. Next you want to do is inspect, making sure that nothing is damaged. If you do not do that inspection at this point and your termination is done and there's a small nick in that cable, you would have to redo the termination all again. Well, you could also use your lineman scissors to strip the jacket of the cable. Let me just explain a little bit about this. So these are specialized scissors. It's not just any other scissors that you can find in the store, but these are specialized. They are specifically meant for network cabling. So it's got a little serration on the edges of the cable, so it's serrated at the edges, and this allows it to grab onto the cable, making it difficult for the cable just to slip out. So when I'm using this tool, there are a few techniques that I do use. I put my middle finger right in here and I just let the tool rest in my palm like this. So once I hold it, I'm going to use my palm to apply pressure on it to do the cutting for me. I don't hold it like my regular scissors, because with time you're going to have so much pain. So let your palm do the cutting for you. When I want to strip this cable, for example, all I'm going to do is keep it on it, applying very little pressure at the tip here, and I'm just going to allow the serration to do the work for me. So what I see here, it's caused the jacket, and then I can just gently break it off like that. That is another way to take the jacket off. So now you've seen both ways to which I was able to use either of these tools to take the jacket off from the cable. Now let's move on to step number 3. So step number 3 of doing this is you want to make sure that if the cable comes with a center divider or a separator, you want to be able to either cut that or just pull it 90 degrees and it's going to snap off. So just like this. For this lab, we are going to be following the 568A wiring scheme. As we discussed in class, the 568A wiring scheme starts from the left to the right, and we're going to be doing pins number 1 all the way through 8. So it's going to be your white green followed by your solid green, your white orange, your solid blue, your white blue, solid orange, your white brown, and your solid brown. So from left to right, that goes from pin numbers 1 to 8. And if you want to do the 568B wiring scheme, just interchange the orange and the green pair. So the trick to successfully terminating this is to start with the individual pairs. And since we're doing the 568A wiring scheme, we're going to start with the green pair. So this is the green pair, and I'm going to try and position it in such a way that the green pair comes all the way to my left. And I'm going to start unraveling this cable. So the pair together, I'm going to just take it and unravel it. I've seen some other videos and some other people who take like the jacket of it and they try and just split the first one and slide it on like that, and they use that just like that by spinning it around, and it's easier to come off like that. I thought it was pretty cool. So for those of you who also want a quick and easier way to do it, you can also use that. So by just opening it up, you can take that, put it on, and just wrap it around. It just spins around it like that. I think it's cool. Let me know if this is an easier way for you to do it or not. Well, so you unravel it. I have to let you know though that once you get into this field of network cabling and you start making all your patch cables and unraveling and straightening cables, at one point you're going to have so much pain here, but with time, you know, it's going to go away, that pain, and you're not going to feel it. So with these, I'm going to show you 2 different techniques that you can straighten these cables out. So I started with my green pair, and I want to make sure that since my pin number 1 is the white green, so it's the white cable with green stripes on it, it was part of that pair. I'm going to just use my thumb to straighten the cable out like that, right? And that is the first step to a successful termination. Once you're able to get all your cables straight this way, it makes it extremely easier when you assembling all the cables together. So after my white green and solid green, my next cable is going to be my white orange. So now I have to come and start working on the orange pair. Notice that the brown pair is pin 7 and 8, so that's going to be the last one that I'm going to be dealing with. So once this is unraveled, I have to take all the kinks out. You can either do it with your thumb like that, just straighten it out and get it straight, but like I said, it takes a lot of work to do. Or this is where your lineman scissors comes in. The notches, it's got some notches in here, and the notches allows you to help straighten cables out. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this and just leave it on an angle, I'd say probably about 10 to 15 degrees. Let the cable just lay in that notch, put your thumb on it and straighten it out, and that helps to take out all the kinks out of the cable in one shot. I have to, however, caution you, if you go on this way at 90 degrees, what you'll end up doing is you're going to strip the jacket and expose the copper, because that end of the notch is very sharp and it's meant to strip the jacket off the cable. So that's what this scissors is for. But you want to just lay it down like that, keep your thumb on it, and just gradually just stretch it out, and all the kink goes out of that. So now I have two very straight cables. I have the orange pair stretched out properly, so it's time for me to also arrange them. So I started with my white green and then my solid green. Next is going to be the white orange. So I want to make sure that I'm not crisscrossing cables. So for example, this was here like that. If I wanted to go here right away, you can see that I'm crisscrossing on this end, then it's going to affect my overall cable arrangement. So what you also want to do is to make sure that the cables do not crisscross if you can. So the next one is going to be my orange, my white orange. I put that next to the green and just straighten it, all of them out like that. So once I straighten it, you can see that the cables are together even if I let go. And the key here was that I did make sure that all the kinks were taken out of the cable before I started to align them. Next after that is supposed to be my pin number 4, which is my solid blue. And the solid blue is part of this blue pair. So what I also have to do is take out all the kinks out of it. An easier way, I always prefer to take out all the kinks out of it, straighten everything. Like once I finish unraveling it, I always like to take out all the twists out of the cables, and it's easier for me to arrange them. So having done it like this, it's going to be so easy for me to arrange them as and when I do. So once I start with my white green and I keep going like that. So I started with my white green, as you could see from here, that's my white green, and then my solid green. And then I did bring the white orange, and at this point I'm able to bring in my solid blue next to it and just keep it together. Now every time I put them together, what I do is I try and straighten them all together to have them all aligned side by side. After my solid blue, it's going to be my white blue, which is this one. I bring that next to it like that and I let them stay. So this is the trick. This is what you have to do to get all your cables aligned properly. After the white blue, it's my solid orange. Bring that next to it. And then finally my white brown and solid brown. I bring them both together like that. So that is what I've done. Now let's take a look at something here. You know, I said if we can, let's avoid all the kinks and all the crisscrosses. So now I can see my orange is crisscrossing, and this could lead to potential problems. So what I have to do and what I can do is allow the orange to go behind the blue like that. And then this comes up here. Now you see what a difference this has made. So it all comes up with your strategy to try and arrange all the cables together in a nice and uniform manner. So this is what I've been able to achieve by doing this. So now once I've done this, because we are using a pass-through connector, right, I don't really need to measure how much I have to cut, because all the excess cable is going to be cut off by the tool that I'm using. To make sure that I'm able to slide it in properly, I'm just going to trim a little bit from here using my lineman scissors. So I can just trim a little bit like that. So yeah, just by trimming all the excess, you know, it just gives me the flexibility of making sure that I can hold the cables all together and then I can fit them in. I was talking about the mistake that students commonly do, and they end up having their cables all flipped. For any of these RJ45 male plugs, anytime you hold it up like this with all the golden pins facing the top, your pin number 1 is always going to be to your left. So here is going to be your pin number 1 all the way to pin number 8 to your right. And we know that pin number 1 for the 568A wiring scheme is the white green. So you want to make sure that your white green cable aligns to your left. Now, on the other hand, if you take this and you flip it upside down and you have the release clip or the retaining clip, this one here, if you have that facing up, then your pin number 1 is going to be on your right. I always say to my students that it's very important that you learn only one way so you don't confuse yourself. So the best way to learn it is always make sure you have the golden clips facing the top, and pin number 1 is going to be on your left. So I'm going to set this tool here. I'm going to make sure that my cable arrangement is still as it's supposed to be. I give it a quick verification again before I even start to slide it in. So my white green solid green, white orange solid blue, white blue solid orange, white brown and solid brown. So now that I have it with the jack facing up, I'm just going to align it here and start sliding it through. And because this is a pass-through jack that I'm using, you notice that it comes all the way through it like that. I don't stop there. I push it all the way till it gets to the end like this, because I want to make sure that when I crimp it, it's going to clip onto the jacket to hold it in place. So once I have done this, I can either grab either of these tools and use them to terminate. For the first part, I'm going to use this tool. On the other end, I'm going to use this tool also. So in this way, since this is where the cutting happens, I'm going to end up using the 8th position. So just slide this in through like that, and everything is going to come through here. And at that point, once I have it flash up here, I can just go ahead and crimp it. So by crimping it, you can see the blade is going to start doing the cutting for me, and it all falls off like that. So this gives you a very clean cut at the end like that, and your termination is complete. So this is just how the termination is done using this one. On the opposite end, I'm just going to do the exact same thing, but this time I'm going to use one that has the boot on it, and we're going to look at the difference between the two. Now, when using the cables with the boot, it's always advisable to put the boot on first. Remember, you cannot put the boot on after the fact. So before I even started to strip the jacket off, I'm going to slide the boot on like that. And anytime you slide it, you slid the boot on, make sure that this side goes first and you don't go this way. That's the wrong way to go. So I'm going to have my boot go on, and I'm going to break off my cable divider. You can either use your scissors to cut it off, or you can also go on a 90-degree and snip it off. So here I'm just going to go as fast as I can. I'm going to terminate here as well as the 568A because I want a straight through. Cables have been arranged nicely. I'm going to trim off some of the excess and take that. I'm going to put the boot on. Remember, pin number 1 is going to be to my left. So now I have my jack on. I don't crimp at this point. Remember, I have a boot on it, so it is at this point that I have to put the boot on. Without the boot on, once I crimp, I cannot, because once I crimp, it has to lock it in place. So that's just what it is. I'm going to snap it on like that. So now I have my boot and that on. Now I'm going to take my crimp tool and I'm going to let that do the crimp for me. So it's in the lock state right now. I just have to push this button and it opens up fully for me to use. I'm going to slide that in here just as the description shows here. My retaining clip has to be on top because the cutting blade is coming from the bottom. So I'm just going to take this and slide that in like that. At this point, I want to make sure that it's fully seated in it before I start to crimp. And once I start crimping, it cuts off all the excess, and at the same time it just crimps it on, and that is done. So this is how we terminate our cables using the pass-throughs. It's very straightforward, and once you've done this, it's time to test and see if your cables have been terminated properly. At this point, I'm going to grab my pass-through tester, and I'm just going to take these cables, take that out, plug one end into the remote and plug one end into the main. So when you look at this, what I want to see is, I want to see that pin 1 matches pin 1 on here. So when this lights up, the corresponding number here should light up. When I'm having numbers jumping all over the place, let's say number 1 on the main lights up and number 7 on the remote lights up, then that means that my cables have been crossed and it doesn't correspond for 1 to 1. So let's turn this on and see what happens. So you can see when one lights up here, one lights up here, the same thing happens all the way to the end. And that just goes to show that the cables have been terminated right. Well folks, so this brings us to the end of lab number 3. If you found this video interesting, like, share, subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you on the next one.